Welcome everybody to the New Jersey Youth Soccer Legends Series. Today with us is the legendary Heather O'Reilly. 231 caps for the US, 47 goals. 2004 Olympics, 2008, 2012, 2016. World Cup, 2007, 2011, 2015. UNC superstar, New Jersey native. Wow, that's crazy. How are you?
Thank you. It's always, it's always a little self-esteem boost to have somebody read off the accolades. I am doing well. Unique time for everybody, I think. So it's all good, but a good time of reflection, I think, from everybody. And so, I'm really happy to be here with you and reflect on, my past experiences in football and maybe how I can assist the young players today, especially during this unique time.
Yeah, awesome. So you're obviously born and raised in New Jersey. One of the hot topics right now is practicing at home. We know, and it's known throughout the professional soccer world that every time a professional player reflects, they think back to the at-home training that they used to do, whether it was at home or in their neighborhood. It was those hours that you clock away from the field that really develops the greatness. I'm guessing, in fact, for sure, you used to practice on your own. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit of where you grew up and how you used to practice at home, and how did you used to clock in the extra hours?
Yeah, I definitely did train on my own. It was something that I enjoyed. I think it wasn't like a chore for me. So I grew up in East Brunswick, New Jersey. I had have three older brothers who all played, recreationally or high school soccer at least. So early days, I went out with them into, the backyard, and we had a net, and we had like a chimney that I would always hit the ball against. So that was my wall work early on when I was just a little kid. But I just loved being with the ball, and I had a real fire in my heart, like since I was young, to just compete, to win, to be the best. I think early days I really wanted to like impress my brothers. I think that was like a big driver for me. I wanted to like be able to hang with them, even though they were like a few years older than me. So I think early on that was my inspiration. And then later when I started to compete against my peers, I just loved winning. I loved, pushing myself and competing, like I said. In terms of my home training, I think two things in particular that I worked on, and I think that it separated myself from my peers, and that was that I did play 1v1s a lot. I had some guy friends in particular that, we could ride our bikes to each other's homes or whatever and play 1v1. So one of my friends, John, was actually also a ODP player, John Channon. He went and played at Columbia, and he lived a few neighborhoods over. So we would meet up and just totally battle it out. So that was a really great tool for me. And secondly, I do think that I spend time on my fitness and my running capacity. From a very early age, I was involved in youth national teams. So I had some guidance, I think, in terms of what kind of fitness to do or programs to do. So I would say probably age 14 and on, 1v1s and fitness were my differentiators. And I think that it perpetuates itself, right? Because if you're good at something, you want to do it more. And if you're good at something, you feel good about it, and it raises your self-esteem. So those were sort of my differentiators that I certainly put a lot of time into. Clearly looking back, I do wish that I, spent more time just refining some of my first touch and skill work. But I think, you can always look back and say, that you wish you did some things differently, but I am proud of how it panned out for me.
Yeah, that's crazy. So when you look at you as a player, and I obviously watched you your whole life playing with the national team. Everything you described that happened to you as a kid mirrors into how you were as a player. Obviously, having the three brothers made you super competitive, and you were like so competitive on the field when you used to play. The 1v1, which you were brilliant at, taking people on the wing, again, that was something that you did as a kid. And then when you said the fitness, was that a lot of endurance running? Was that just a lot of long distance running, or was that like sprint work, or a combination?
It was a combination. I think like early days, I just kind of did what my coaches had told me to do. So, you know, the old school UNC fitness packets of 5 back, 10 back, 15 back, 20 back. And I had the times to clock, and I had a watch on, and I recorded it, and I didn't allow myself to like miss the times. So I think it was a little bit of both. I do think probably it was like some smaller distance running when I was younger. I wasn't really aware of like expanding my like aerobic capacity. I didn't really like longer runs, but as I sort of got into my I guess my late teens and college years, I knew that I needed to sort of expand my aerobic base before I could really kind of put in some grind with power and speed. And so later on, I would definitely spend more time on doing that stuff.
Cool. So you mentioned college there, your college, Packer. You played at UNC. What a fantastic institution. So before, when you went into college, you obviously would have found things that you didn't expect before you went in, right? What are some of the things that you went into and you were shocked that existed in the place, whether it was the level of competition, the intensity of the training, the professionalism? Like, you know, when you're about to go to a place and you got these visions, oh, this is how it's going to be, but then you get there and it's like kind of totally different. What are some of those things with UNC anyway?
Well, I think that I don't think that anything shocked me when I arrived at UNC, but I think that it you know, re-emphasized why I went there in the first place. And that was because people were like-minded like me. So I guess, you know, I grew up in a wonderful soccer environment, but I was still way more competitive than my friends, certainly in like my town and my high school team, which I played and I enjoyed. I enjoyed playing high school soccer. It was a wonderful social thing for me. And I was forced to, you know, carry the team on my back every single game. And there was a lot of positives like that. But there was certainly a difference in the way that I approached training from me, you know, from my high school peers. And even at PDA and a club environment and ODP, like I was keeping score all the time. I was really like emotional, like sometimes probably too emotional, but like if I was doing like a finishing drill and wasn't putting it away, like I would get upset. And I think that like a lot of my peers and friends were like, okay, like Heather, like relax, chill, whatever. And then I got to UNC and I think I realized like, these are my people. Like these people are just like me. They're just as crazy as I am. They're just like as driven as I am. In terms of practice, it was like everybody always knew the score, always calling out the score, like keeping each other accountable. So I think that more than being surprised, I kind of more felt like at home, and that like I said, I fit in, and they were people just like me. But yeah, so I think just the competitive nature of everybody day in and day out was something that was eye-opening.
Yeah, that's awesome. Not intentionally to put a plug in for you and say what a history that they have, and the amount of players that that have gone from UNC onto the national team. How much did playing there help you in your career with the women's national team? So you obviously built an amazing foundation here in New Jersey, playing club ball, playing a PDA that set you up nicely. How much of an influence do you think the college ball at UNC helped you with the national team?
I think that it helped a lot, to be honest. I think obviously Anson Dorrance is one of the best motivators around. So even just showing up at the training ground with Anson there just heightened the level of expectations and accountability for me. So I think that those like day in and day out habits that I created over 4 seasons was really helpful. I also think that it was a collection of amazing players that I was playing with every day. So the likes of Lindsay Tarpley, Lori Kolupny, Casey White, Kendall Fletcher. And then later on, when I was a senior, I had, Ashlyn Harris come through, Tobin Heath, Keith Zagara. So like I was not only around this leader that was, expecting great things from all of us, but I was around really good players. So I think that the environment really helped me. I think, a lot of different schools now are offering wonderful things and talent's a little bit spread out. But when I was, in the early 2000s, when I was kind of coming through, like that was a pretty concentrated talent pool at UNC. So I think that helped me tremendously with my development.
Yeah, so the level of competition was through the roof every single day, and I suppose when you went to the US Women's National Team, you're just used to competing mentally at a high level. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about your mentality. I mean, I admired watching you play, and I know that almost everybody loved you because of your mentality. You had this, blue collar fighting, you never gave up, and you had this look on your face that you were just giving everything you got every second of the game. Talk a little bit about that. Were you just born with that, or did you know that it existed and you started to work on it, and people brought it to light, and you kind of made more of an effort to I'm going to be the hardest working player 100% of the time, because that's what you were.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think I alluded to it at the beginning of the interview that I do think that, I did come from a family of like good athletes. My dad was a track runner at Villanova University. Not like Olympic status, but like right under that. So like he was, a good athlete. Like I think I got like good genes in terms of like just a physique and a running capacity. And again, I think that like my family life kind of created a situation where competition and showing off and that kind of thing was like very much like part of our identity. And I think so that kind of perpetuated things from a very early on stage. So I guess to answer your question, I think that like some of it was innate, and some of it I think was due to my environments that I was put into.
That's awesome. That's all. So your dad was an athlete too. How much of an influence did your parents play, and what type of parents were they? Did they kind of just let you navigate through your career on your own and make mistakes? Were they more hands-on, trying to direct you in a particular direction? How did your parents handle your youth career?
Yeah, they, looking back, I'm really appreciative of their level of involvement. I think that they were like the near perfect soccer parents, and nobody's perfect, but yeah, they were close. I think you know, they knew that I was a special little athlete, but they didn't want to like push me too hard. So, I mean, one of the things that I think was cool was that I did play another sport. I played basketball when I was a young player, because my parents and myself knew that like soccer was my number one, but that this was like really good for me in terms of like a cross training sort of thing, and also just like a different group of friends, a different focus. And so they, I think, really were involved a lot in my like holistic growth,
Right.
from school to different sports and things like that. So they didn't let me get like too focused, because I think that they knew that that was potentially a problem. They knew that I had a special gift and they wanted to like let it unfold, I think, in an appropriate way. My dad, I think, definitely took the reins on my development in terms of, you know, bringing me to tryouts, being educated in terms of like where maybe I should look to be playing and who the best coaches. And so he helped me navigate things like that. There's one day in particular that I look back on, and I owe a lot to my dad. So before I played New Jersey ODP, I was in something called Mid-New Jersey Select. And essentially that was just, you know, Central New Jersey kids. I'm not even sure if they still have that.
No,
but
they do, but
they do, yeah. So this was my first tryout for Mid-New Jersey Select. And I was a little bit late to the scene because they had it the year before, but I think we just like didn't know or like missed it. And so I get to the field, and because a lot of the girls already knew each other, they sort of had their groups and cliques and stuff like that. And I didn't know anybody. I mean, I was on my own in terms of, you know, the only player from my town and my club team. And I was a little bit shy at that point, believe it or not. And I just like, I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't want to be there. I was like, didn't feel like I fit in. So I was like basically crying in the bathroom. Like, I don't want to go. Like, I don't know anybody. This is at the fields, like literally at the fields. And then I come out and tell my dad, I'm like, I want to go home. And I'm crying, and he was like, no, like, you're not going. He was like, we're not going home. Like, you just go out there, like just go say hello to somebody, just roll the ball out there and just go and get started. And that was like a really, you know, that could have gone either way, because I think that if my dad had listened to this like 13-year-old kid that was saying that they want to go, I would have probably gotten in the car, and I would have probably never, you know, therefore went to New Jersey ODP and then youth national teams, etc. But just like that nudge, literally, I think he maybe like pushed me to like get on the pitch, you know, led to incredible things. And so I think I look back at things like that they were like gently nudging along, but, and there, like I said, nobody's perfect. There was a couple years, especially in my teenage years, where my dad was like a little bit too involved. I think he just, like anybody, he got wrapped up in it. He was spending a lot of time taking me to my practices and paying attention to where other people were going to college, and just like was a little bit too hands-on. And I think that it caused some, I wouldn't say rifts, but like it definitely, you know, I wasn't a teenager, so I was already kind of like a little hothead. But I think there was like a few games where I asked my dad not to come because he was like yelling at the games. And him and my mom like had to like have a meeting and like sort out how to like, you know, best deal with this. But they were respectful of my wishes, and you know, for the most part were wonderful soccer parents, and you know, came to a lot of games, but not every game. And after we would get into the car, you know, they knew that generally like I wouldn't want to really talk about the game right away. So they would, you know, say good work. If they said like good work, I knew that like it wasn't like a great game, which is great because like you can always bring your work ethic. Like, and I think that they knew that they were like, good work. You tried really hard. You played really hard. And I could read through the lines that they probably thought that it wasn't like the best game ever. But I think that that's what parents should do, you know, praise the things that you can control, like attitude and work ethic. Another time I remember, actually just now thinking about it, my dad knew that I kind of yelled at one of my coaches in basketball. Like I was just frustrated and I yelled, and he definitely like made me apologize to the coach after the practice. And before we could go home, I like had to go apologize. So things like that, I do think that like they had their finger on the pulse of what was going on, but they definitely tried to stay in range.
Yeah, that's awesome. This is why we're doing this video series. Some key things there. The whole parent thing, I think we can talk about it for days, but you've definitely got some interesting stories there. The one that I like the most, and I think that will be impactful, not only at ODP, but I think on all levels, you get a lot of kids that show up to the field and they feel intimidated and they don't want to walk out on the field. And I've had, you know, dozens and dozens of times when, you know, parents have walked over a boy or a girl that's in tears and doesn't want to train, and everything that you just went through. So hearing that, the way your dad handled it and you hopping out on the field, you never know that experience. If you didn't do it, you probably would have done it again at your next tryout, which maybe was ODP, that your whole life could have been different, correct?
Yeah, no doubt. I look back on that and I think that was a really important day. And yeah, I mean, it's tough to like, for, you know, I'm having a baby in a couple months, so I will get my first chance to actually be on the other side of the lines.
Yeah, you will.
Be a parent. So I'm sure that it's not always easy. But you do know best for your kids sometimes. You know, you have to like listen to what they're saying and take it seriously. But, you know, you do know best. And I think my dad knew best in that time and was gently encouraging. And whenever I'm with kids, like to your point, they're a lot of times intimidated. I think the social component of sport is huge. So I always try to like encourage kindness and inclusion, and certainly an anti kind of bullying atmosphere of soccer, because, you know, I think that it does kind of turn people away or brings them in the way that they feel about like the team atmosphere and things like that. If they feel safe to make mistakes, if they feel safe to try things, and if they feel safe to be themselves, I think everybody's a lot better off.
That's awesome. Final little segment, ODP. You went through ODP. Almost everyone that I've spoken to so far didn't make it at their first crack. Were you one of them, or did you make it the first time you went out? And tell us a little bit about your experience.
For me, ODP was really positive. I think it led to, you know, all kinds of things with, you know, national team selection and things like that. And I think that it opened my eyes that, like, yeah, I was the best player in my town and maybe my area, but there was a lot of other good players out there. So I think that it was always helpful for me to like be around a new set of players every year. I loved ODP. I still keep in touch with some of those players. Like that's like 20 years later.
That's awesome.
So that kind of speaks to how much that it meant to me. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So I was on the side of like, I always made the team.
All right. You're the first one.
Yeah. I never really got cut early on. Certainly. I was a little bit of a late bloomer. Like I said, I think my parents were a little bit late to like the scene. So I always joke with Ashlyn, because Ashlyn was my birth year and she was getting brought up to the national teams like a few years prior to me. And I was always so jealous of her. But, you know, clearly I got there eventually. Yeah, but I don't think I faced like a tremendous amount of adversity when I was younger. I do think that like from a physical standpoint, I was always like the fastest player. So I think that probably helped my selection process. Like I think, you know, maybe a player that wasn't as fast, but they were like cerebrally advanced would maybe get surpassed. But I think because I had like early physical platform, it sort of helped me with that kind of selection. Yeah, it was still nerve-wracking. I mean, I remember all those days of like going down at regional camp and checking the board and seeing if you're on it. But yeah, I didn't face too many cuts early on.
Good for you. All right. So having such a long history, I couldn't resist. I got a question for you. Favorite moment
of my entire career?
Yeah. What stood out the most? If you could go back and relive one moment again, just one.
Yeah. It's hard because I do have a lot of moments.
You do?
Well, a few moments that stand out particularly to me. I think one of my top moments was when I was a very young player on the national team, and I broke my leg in 2003. So I was like in the running to make the World Cup team, broke my leg, and it was just basically way too soon for me to come back and compete in the World Cup. So in terms of adversity and getting cut from teams and things like that, like that was maybe my real first moment of adversity, gaining that injury and then not being able to make the team in time. So I was really proud of the way that I recovered. And then just the next year in 2004, I was selected for the Olympic team at age 19. So I was by far the youngest player on the team. And one of my most favorite moments, most favorite goals was in overtime against Germany. I was inserted into the game off the bench in overtime, and a few minutes in, I like had a wide open opportunity. I like beat the goalkeeper. All I had to do was basically slide it into an open net, and I just scuffed it. It was on my left foot, and I just scuffed it, and it like dinged the post and trickled out of bounds. And I totally remember like the feeling of like when you're just so exposed, you just like, we're running back for the goal kick. And I remember looking over at Abby and looking for like a, don't worry, buddy, you'll get it next time. And she just like didn't say anything. She was exhausted. And I just felt very, I don't know, very like alone and exposed in that moment. And it was a real kind of defining moment of my young career, because I definitely like dug deep and had a lot of self-belief. And then just a few minutes later, Mia Hamm, who was my idol and teammate, which was a bizarre situation as a teenager, got end line, cut it back, and I was able to finish into the far post, which led us on to the final. And then we won the gold medal. And it was a really wonderful way to send off like those incredible role models of mine. But I think that, you know, the way that I sort of rebounded in that moment is something that like sticks with me for a long time. And it was a really important goal.
Oh, what a crazy story. That's awesome. Well, listen, on the behalf of everybody at New Jersey Youth Soccer, and I'm sure I'm speaking for the hundreds and thousands and millions of fans around the world, you're always inspirational to watch. And I always loved watching you just because of the fight that you would bring to the game every single day. I want to thank you for hopping on. Great interview. We'll be sharing this, and I'm sure people are going to get a chuckle and be inspired at the same time.
Cool. Well, I hope so. I hope to, if I could have motivated one person to just kind of be themselves and leave it out there, that's the way to live. So good luck. You have,
mate. You have. We'll talk, all right?
All right, James. Thank you. And best of luck with the series.
Safe, okay?
All right.
All right.
Be safe. Be healthy. Take care.
Bye.